Detecting. Enabled. Fantastic. All right, we're going to try something a little bit different today. I'm Ash Mars, and welcome to Ashes to Awakening. I am really excited to do this, and nervous, and all of the things. I've been feeling this call to share my voice and my perspective, and today we're going to have a discussion about whether true success is defined by external achievements, social metrics, money, productivity, hustle culture, or if it's something else. If there's something more to life than just all of those things. So that's what we're going to discuss today, but we're going to do it in a little bit of an unconventional way. I am a new parent with an infant, and I am moving across the country, and I feel this deep need to share what I'm going to share with you, but I do not have time to sit in this pretty little background and share it with you. So instead, you're going to do some things with me. And I hope that this works for you as an audience member. I know that typically when I'm listening to YouTube, talking head stuff, I'm doing things around my house. And so I'm going to take you on the journey of packing up my house with me. So if you're into watching that kind of content, enjoy. And if you're somebody who needs a body double for doing your own thing in your own life and getting some inspirational, conversational, philosophical kinds of stuff, I hope you'll stick around as well. Now I'm going to take you with me to go and do some clothes packing while we discuss success, authentic life. How do we reconcile these things? Where do we know what our truth is? What do we do? How do we make it happen? Let's find out. I think one of the first things that we have to get into is what are traditional definitions of success? In the Western world, success is deeply defined by what you own. I think is a short summation or a short, conclusion sentence. Oftentimes it's what you own, right? The big house, the car, the purse and the bag that you have, all of that tends to be how we define success, I would say, especially in the United States. And then there's extensions of that, right? Typically, people don't want the bag in order to just have the bag for the sake of having the bag. They want it because they want to support their kids, right? It's maybe about extended family or their close family, like their parents. I want to be able to buy that house for my mother, right? There's typically something underlying that. But I would say those external dressings of success, what we get sold as successful, has to do with the appearance of status, social status. So rank in terms of like I'm the CEO or I'm the boss. And all of that is hierarchical, right? I'm the boss of these other people. I am the CEO over these other folks. And those are the types of power that we value. So I think that before we begin our discussion, understanding that that's where I'm coming from in my frame of reference, and a lot of evidence in the world, right? Just like your personal experiences as well. What I also think we're going to dive into is those are the external dressings that it's easy to market to, right? It's easy to sell a diet that gets you to a body because you have a deeper underlying desire to stay alive, to support your family. Right. And we don't often talk about those deeper reasons. We don't talk about the internal motivations of maybe it's I will learn something about myself and that's what's gonna drive me to purchase or to buy or to engage with whatever. But we talk about the surface. And so I think when I really discuss this idea of redefining success, get it all gunked up in my mouth. When I redefine success, it isn't actually a redefinition, it's a deepening of the definition. I think it's Simon Sinek who talks about, connect with your why, right? And that's a lot of motivational pieces are this connect with why, and that will keep you going as things get hard, all of that. We're going to let the dog out together. I think what Simon Sinek is getting at is yes, knowing your why is really important, but also, you want to see the puppy? The why is actually it's more than just the reason, it's the actual goal. Just sitting there hunting something in the grass. And that's the key, right? It is that what we actually want is our why. I want this to make a better world. I want this to make a better family. I want this to share something in the world so that my pain and all of the hardships that I went through meant something. Those pieces, those are actually our definition of success. I am successful if I am seen as turning my pain into something else. I am seen as successful if I am supporting and providing for my family. You know, the nice, the fancy, the shiny things, those are great, but those aren't really our goals. Our goals are actually our why. Okay, we can be done now if that's all you would like. But if you'd like some specifics on how to get there, what that really means, we're going to go into what is real authenticity. I'm going to dissect a couple examples for myself. And so if that kind of modeling helps you, stick around. And I'm back with coffee. All right. So I used to run an autism-centered program. If you don't know what that is, essentially people who have like really significant, hi, I'm up here, people who have really significant autism, some of their sensory differences and how they perceive the world, make it so that they don't develop verbal skills, or they can still communicate, they still understand language sometimes they don't, but they need a lot of extra support interacting with the world that wasn't designed for the way their brains work. I think that's a really important framing. It's not about them being broken. It's about the way the world is oriented towards them. Just key right there. So I was working with these kids, and I worked in a traditional public school, and the school was all about college going, college success. That was really their only definition of success, and they did great work. I'm not trying to badmouth schools where that's the goal. What I'm trying to say is we were operating in a place that was the one definition of success. And for most of the kids that I was teaching, what was successful for them, like a definition of success for them, would have been being able to do kind of daily living skills by themselves, being able to help out with chores at home. That would have been a high level of ability that these kids would have gained in order to do that. And when we define success that way, you're like, oh, you're really just not like holding kids to a high bar. You're not expecting much of them. Some of it is different abilities and different ways of interacting with the world. But I think the deeper thing is that the real success there was, I have something to contribute to the world, right? For some of our kids, it was like they can create art. Even if they don't have any verbal skills, they can still create art in their own way. They can still create beauty. They could still support their family just by maintaining their own space and keeping their own bedroom clean. One of the things that at that phase of my life, and I think it's still under review, but the human condition being this desire to contribute to the world in some way was the definition that we were operating off of. And as I've done a lot of work with transpersonal psychology and my own exploration of meaning and reading lots and lots of religious texts and participating in lots of religious services, I would say what I understand is that we are threads in the universe and we are all part of a collective universal consciousness. This is a very Taoist viewpoint, and that our purpose here is really to experience, and through experiencing, gain self-awareness, gain self-acceptance, and that through doing that for ourselves as a single thread, we weave the tapestry of, right, the connection point. I've got fabric in my hand. So there's like 2 points where 2 threads touch. The greater our self-awareness grows, the greater our self-acceptance grows, the more we're able to connect with those other threads. The thread of you and me, right? Not being isolated, but recognizing and seeing our touch points, our creation points. And that's the way in which we're returning to a collective consciousness, even in a physical form. There are some science pieces around that. I don't want to go on too big of a tangent because it's not really the core of what I want to talk about today. But if that's really interesting to you, I definitely want to talk about it more. So leave me a comment or send me a DM that it's a thing you'd like to hear more about. And the baby's crying again. So I'll be right back again. All right, I am back and better than ever. Are you on face mode? You are not. There we go. So what I got out of this time in my life was a realization that if we only define success one way, essentially what we're saying about the people that I was working with, people with autism, is that they're invalid as humans because there's no way they're ever going to meet that definition of success. And that's just yuck. That's just gross. The ethics of that, the devaluing of another human life in that way. I hope that if you found your way here, it's because you don't believe those things. And so it really forced me to expand the way that I thought. And then also what that gave me was the ability to look at my life and say, it has not looked like a traditional definition of success, and that's okay. You did things differently, and that was actually what you needed to get to your version of success. And that is so empowering. It was no longer, there's a system I don't fit into. It was, I navigated the system and I did the things that I did in order to meet my goal as a thread of the universe, to expand my self-awareness and my self-acceptance. And there were moments where that was not the case, right? It was ugly and gross and dirty um, and hurt and it was painful. I was able to let go of one right definition of success. That's what allowed me to accept myself, right? And accept the differences of my life, and then to see and harvest the learning from it. Because if there's only one right way, every other way is the wrong way. And so any deviation from that, which none of us are living that ideal, means that we live with guilt and shame about it. I'd be curious to hear how that shows up for you. If you want to leave a comment or, send me a DM if that resonates with you. But I think big parts of what I felt were really harmful about this definition was only what I can produce for profit has any kind of value. And that includes my time. And so even in those moments of being able to have relaxation and being at a place where it was like, finally, I have fit the definition of success. I have a teaching job and I work my 9 to 5 and I have a house and all of that. And I had all of these things lined up. I still wasn't allowed to be calm or happy or settled in my body or feel successful when I was sitting in front of the television doing nothing. I often felt a low level of anxiety because I wasn't producing. And it was like, well, how can I start a side gig? How can I do this? How can I maximize every moment of my day? Because that's what I had deeply internalized about success, was that only production has value. And so if you're not in production, you don't have value. So try to produce with every moment that you can. And burnout extreme. Let's just talk about burnout extreme. For this section, I think what I want to kind of close with is this idea that it's important to start to understand and explore within yourself your definition of success and how it does and does not fit into society's definition. Where it is you feel a tension or something that's at odds, starting to recognize that energy. And so I think that's the next thing we're going to get into, which is how do we tap into that authenticity and that realness inside of ourselves through our own self-awareness, instead of just putting on repeat what we've heard from society. And how do we accept that in the deep, deep ways, not just me talking at you, but going through the physical exercise of it. So let's do that next. Okay, so in this part, I want to discuss how the real currency is actually our authenticity. We are told that the currency is money, but in reality, people are exchanging that money to connect with you, to connect with the individual that you are, your authentic voice. In writing, we call it voice. In the spiritual community, it's like alignment. It doesn't really matter what you call it, but it's this idea that, going back to that definition of why we are here as threads of the universe, the more somebody is leaning into their authenticity, the more we see that edge of their thread and the way we connect with it, the more we weave that weft together, the more we want to reach out to see, where do I begin and you end? You're thinking things in your mind that I've been thinking, or articulating things that I've been feeling. That intrigues me, that draws me in. And I think that is really important to remember. I've been told that the currency is sameness. The currency is one definition of success, the white picket fence and the suburban dream in the United States. What it actually is every variation of that. We talk so much right now about the multiverse, and it's become very common in pop culture and Marvel movies and all of that. But it's the full canvas, right, is every thread touching itself, or like woven together touching itself has got some weird connotations, but you know what I mean. That's the key, right? When we share in the way that I'm doing, where it's like, welcome to my messy life. Welcome to seeing the real behind the scenes experience of my life. There's an intrigue to that. There's an intrigue both to the physicality of it. There's also an intrigue to like what's going on inside of my inner mind, because people want to feel the edges of that for you. I think to me, that's what preaching is. When I've been invited to speak for congregations, which I'm not a preacher, like don't get me wrong, but I was doing this meditation exercise where we were meditating on the Bible, and the pastor invited us to stand in front of the congregation and share what we had gotten through this meditation. And when I finished, her comment was, "That's preaching." And what it felt like for me was this: it's not like a hand of God, right? That's, I think, oftentimes the way priests talk about it because of that calling element. But I think all creative energy actually feels very much the same, because when I'm speaking from a source text like the Bible versus when I'm speaking from the source text of my life, not even speaking, but like creating, right? Putting art down on a piece of paper or a canvas or in clay, or creating music, or even just having a conversation with somebody else. As you're creating, there's this energy, there's this fuel, and that's that universal flow of energy that I really want to get into in future videos about abundance and the way that we can tap into that internal flow. But that's not really where we're going today. But if you're curious about that, put a comment down below and I will prioritize that. Goodness, baby noises. So I think that's the key, is recognizing that it is the variation that has value. And so when you're actually looking at the currency of your life, it's not the dollar amount that you're getting from a job. It's not what you can buy with that dollar amount. It's not the power you have over somebody to get that dollar amount. When people truly see me, people truly connect with me because I have truly seen myself and connected within and understand and accept myself. And now other people can do the same. That's juicy. That, I think, is like the core of why we are here, and the core, and in the way that it is the why, it is also the definition and the vision, right? The more we can do, the more that we can live that. That's the vision of success. Yeah. Okay, so if that's what the big purpose of all of us being here is, in my orientation, you don't have to agree with me. You can click off of this if you don't, that's totally fine. But if that's our orientation, and you agree with me and you're sticking here and you're gonna like follow along with me because you think it's kind of cool, maybe it expressed something you'd always thought of and we're struggling to put into words. If that's our orientation of the big weft of the universe and experiencing itself, what is my purpose or your purpose as an individual thread? And that, I think, is where we get into how do we feel through our bodies, through embodiment practices, the thing that is our place to take in the larger tapestry. And to me, that, I think, is the important key to remember as you're defining success for yourself and you're thinking about all of the things that I know come up for me of like, well, if you do this, it's selfish, or if you do this, you're taking away from somebody else, or if you do this, other people will disapprove of you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Whatever those mindsets are that come up for you, the little like inner oppressor that's having that conversation in your ear, trying to keep you on that one right path. If I don't take my place in the larger tapestry, that is actually the problem. Because then there's a hole in that experience and something else has to come in and fill it. Somebody else has to be born, or some other sort of experience has to happen there, right? But I also think that in my orientation, there is no right way, which means there is no wrong way. And that then means that even when you think you've done the wrong thing, you haven't, because that was actually the gap maybe you were filling in for somebody else. Multiverse, universe, all experiences are valid, individualized ethics to a certain degree, and that gets sticky. And if you're down for it, let's hang out. And if you're not, that's okay. If you're down for it, click like and subscribe and get more messages from me in the future. And we can have these lovely conversations and co-working sessions. You ever have one of those moments where you're like, there's a Tupperware in the fridge and I don't know what's in there? Yeah, I just had one of those moments. I'm not sure what this is. So one of the things that I think is important to keep in mind is that our definition and our vibration of success is going to change over our lifetime. When I was 8 years old, my vibration towards success was making friends, right? Maybe. But what I have more of a realization of is like, there was a point when I asked myself the question of why am I here? And what I got back was teaching. And there's a whole process to that and a whole story to that. And I can, if you're interested in it, let me know in the comments. Essentially, in that moment, that was my answer. That was the vibration. That was the direction I needed to go at that phase of my life. And it isn't the direction I need to go anymore, right? I'm no longer in the classroom teaching. I am teaching in this way, but at that time, my vision of success needed to be teaching in the classroom to get the skills to be able to do things like this. To get other skills, to get other life experiences for healing. And that I think is the important thing to remember, because when we see that our definition of success and accept that our definition of success is going to change over our lifetime, then we've never made a wrong choice. We've never made a bad choice. We never did the wrong thing. I spent 7 years in an abusive relationship that absolutely wrecked me, and I had to do years of therapy about. I spent a lot of time regretting that choice. How could I stay for so long in such a bad situation? How could I let that happen to me? And what was even harder was it was like I felt like I had been called to that relationship. And so then to be angry at whatever God, spirit, divine, universal energy was out there, to be like, well, how can I trust you now? And what I had to realize was that was actually the choice I needed to make at the time to get very specific lessons and learning. And I needed to be there for 7 years, because if I wasn't in that one relationship for 7 years, I would have just picked the same thing in different relationships I had already been doing to heal the aspects of my romantic relationships that were showing up in my work relationships. And the tools that I gained from my marriage helped me to do that. And then that helped me build into what I'm doing right now, because I healed that relationship with work relationships, and then I started to heal it internally. And that's when I finally did that depth of work, and it actually became internal to me. That's when I felt the call to share what I'd gained. That is why it transformed over time. And if we think about it as a thread, right, we weave in and out. We don't go in a single direction. Our lives are full of twists and turns. There's been times in my life that I felt a lot of guilt and shame about that. How could I not just know the one thing that I was meant to do? I had a friend when I was growing up, and we were like 7, and she was like, I'm going to be a NICU nurse. And that's exactly what she's doing. And for some people, it is that way. And I'm sure that there's been other things on her path that have felt like they've woven in and out, and trials and tribulations that she's been through. It just wasn't in her career, but that was her purpose in being there. She knew it at 7, but very few of us do. I think more people have experiences like me where it changes over time, and then we have regrets and we feel like we made the wrong choice. And so we lose trust in ourselves and we lose trust in our faith. Some people just stay there. Right. I think what it allows me to do is to reframe my story and to be the hero of my story. It's no longer, I was in a shitty relationship because I was a bad person and I need to feel guilt and shame about that. It's I was in that relationship because I gained something from it. So now I'm the hero of my own story. I did the learning. I overcame the darkest moment. I fought my own demons. Owning that spiritual sovereignty is, I think, a really key element to, and redefining success is what comes from internally to us, and authenticity, and how we share that, or how we just live it. Because, right, like all of that time that I did the work from relationship to work to inner world, that was the work of my life. That was the reason for me having those experiences. That was the purpose. It didn't have to be external. So you could be in that phase as well for yourself of, I'm actually doing the experiencing right now. And that is also really, really valuable. Value come from that comes from, you never know where it's going to take you. Now you have somebody like me that you're listening to, whereas I had different people. And so the way in which your self-awareness might be expanded, and then in the future, you're called to create something using that. You might be at an information gathering or a processing stage right now, and that's totally cool. I'm glad you found your way here. Glad to be part of your journey. really honored that you took the time to be this far into this video and listen to all of my rantings and inner thoughts that I find fascinating and I think are important. Yeah, I really appreciate that. So good to meet you and thank you. I think I'm going to shift into my closing reflection, which is you don't need to prove your worth through numbers. And when you are authentically yourself, you know deep in your heart and the vibration of your body is your reason for being here. That's your greatest gift. That's where you have value. That is where abundance will come into your life because it's going to be your version of abundance. It's going to be your definition of success and it's going to feel so stinking good. It's not going to feel anxiety inducing or you're not doing enough. I think we really have to undo those traumas and those hurts for ourselves to get to a point where we can even allow ourselves to feel that. So that's the journey of this channel. That's the journey of this work at Ashes to Awakening. And if you want to support it, hop over to my Substack and you can get more from me. If you are already on that Substack, consider becoming a paid subscriber and to come into the inner circle where I do more practical practices. So how do I feel the embodiment? What's the meditation that I use to support people and myself to tap into this abundant flow energy of the universe? All of that is over there. So yeah, come check it out. I hope to see you again soon. Bye.